Webster defines crunch time as a critical moment or period, like the end of a game, when decisive action is needed. Every sports fan knows this time in the game. Your palms sweat just a little more, your heart races just a little bit faster, and you live and die with every play until the final seconds tick off the clock and you're either celebrating a victory or disappointed by the defeat. The team at Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network understands just how critical these moments are. For us, it begins as soon as the next set of games are on the board. We evaluate the opening lines and any breaking news throughout the week. We cover each game inside and out, whether it's from inside the locker room to a huddle down on the field, the court, or the ice. We take you inside the meeting room with scouts, coaches, and executives. We have our fingers on the pulse of all the sports that we cover: the National Hockey League, NBA, college basketball, college football, and the National Football League. We are the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, and we're here to help you find your sports advantage. After all the data has been crunched, we then turn it over to Kenneth for the best analysis around. His unique perspective in both understanding the data and how it applies to the game and how you win is the Crunch Time Sports Advantage. Are you ready? The Crunch Time Jet is fueled and ready for takeoff, and the Crunch Time Express is about to leave the station. Your VIP pass has been approved, so all aboard.
Welcome to the 2024 College Football Team Autopsy Report. An autopsy report is a document that summarizes the findings of an autopsy, an examination of a body after death. It includes details of the examination, tests, and observations performed, as well as the cause and manner of death. Just like a real autopsy report, the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network College Football Autopsy Report examines a team's body of work after the season has concluded. This report includes a review of the team's season win total and whether they met expectations, key offensive, defensive, and special teams metrics that shaped the season, a deep dive into coaching decisions, including situational play and fourth down aggressiveness, a final season grade, evaluating execution, performance in key moments, and consistency, the final verdict, analyzing what went right, what went wrong, and what must be fixed for 2025. With the 2024 season in the rearview mirror, it's time to examine the patient. To present the findings, we have called in our Chief Medical Examiner and Senior Analyst, Kenneth.
And welcome into the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network Team Autopsy Report for the Washington Huskies. UW is in the building. Let's get familiar. For all of our viewers on YouTube and streaming this on our Twitter feed at Crunch Time VIP, I want to say thank you for joining us. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform, I want to say thank you as well. Folks, I got you for the next 26 minutes, so let's not waste any time. We're going to go through a lot of information about the Washington Huskies to see if this program is trending up or trending down with the new head coach, Jedd Fisch. Okay, so let's talk about Jedd Fisch's coaching career. Now, we know he served as the interim coach for UCLA for 2 games. We're going to disregard that, and we're going to look at his 3 years there as the head coach at Arizona. 16 wins, 21 losses. Now, 10 of those 16 wins coming in his final season there with the Wildcats. So, kind of a mixed bag there. Really rough first year, kind of got the building blocks together his second year, and then really took off his third year. Now, his first year at Washington resembled his second year at Arizona, going 6-7 this year. So we'll keep that in mind as this team starts to recoup their roster after Kalen DeBoer led them to a college football playoff appearance, then departed last year for the University of Alabama. So, Jedd Fisch, what did we learn about your 2024 Washington Huskies? Let's get into the data here. Okay, so like we always will do, we're going to start right there with the season win total. Back in June, 7.5. So if you took the over, you did not get a chance to cash that ticket there as Washington came up short of that expectation. Now, when we look at our in-season composite win total, 3 very distinct but extremely highly predictive when it comes to evaluating teams as far as their in-season production week in and week out. Folks, I think we hit the nail on the head with this hammer. Our number comes across as a 6.0. So this team absolutely met our expectation because we saw them as a 6-win team during the season, and that's exactly what they wound up being. So we'll take a look at that expectation there. Now, when we talk about your schedule, 2 very unique but different sides of the coin as far as how we evaluate your schedule. The first part of that equation is your strength of schedule. We're going to look at it from a power ranking standpoint. How did we judge your team in Washington based on their opponent's power rankings? Now, when you play in a big time conference like the Big Ten, Southeastern Conference, ACC, Big 12, you're only going to control about 20 to 25% of your schedule, your non-conference. The rest of your schedule in conference is going to be determined strictly by a look at a draw. You could have a very difficult conference schedule where you're playing the top tier teams in your league, but with these super expanded conferences now, you can wind up playing none of those teams and playing the bottom of your league and really racking up a lot of wins, but your strength of schedule may not reflect that. Now, that's where the second component comes in, your strength of record. Basically, we're judging your opponents on how did they do from a win-loss standpoint. This you absolutely have no control over. So we're going to see if Washington played a difficult strength of schedule and had a difficult strength of record right now. So strength of schedule, we had them at a .502. That was 30th out of 134 teams last year. Quite solid schedule there. Now, when we look at their strength of record, 636, that was the 10th best in college football. So they played a difficult schedule, but their opponent's win-loss record is going to be better than where their opponent's power ranking was. And once we pull that up on the screen, I'll be able to walk through that here for you. Okay, so let's walk through the opponent's record. And if you're watching this on YouTube or our Twitter feed at Crunchtime VIP, you'll be able to see their opponent's power rankings as well. So Weber State, a FCS opponent. So we're going to kick all of that data out. Eastern Michigan was 5-7. Washington State, Apple Cup still got played this past season. We love seeing these rivalry games when conferences split up, or in this case, dismantled, that we can still get these rivalry games. So Washington State was 8-4. Northwestern was 4-8. Rutgers was 7-5. Michigan was 7-5. The Iowa Hawkeyes come in at 8-4. America's team in Indiana, 11-1. USC, 6-6. Penn State, 11-1. UCLA, 5-7. And then ending the regular season with longtime Pac-12 foe in Oregon, who finished the season 12-0. Now, when I say that their power rankings were a little bit off when you look at the win-loss record, you look at USC's jump out. Power ranked 19th, even though they had a 6-6 record. That's one that stands out right off the bat. And then you look at an Eastern Michigan, even though they were 5-7, because they're a MAC team, their power ranking was 119th, while UCLA, with that same 5-7 record, had a power ranking of 59. So that's where the disparity comes in at when I'm looking at the strength of schedule versus the strength of record. Now, speaking of that, let's judge how good were the defenses that this Washington Husky offense had to go up against last year. We're going to set a baseline number of 68 because that's how many Power 4 teams we had last year. So let's take a look at how many teams fit that criteria. Rutgers was 64th, Michigan 21st. Right behind them, the Iowa Hawkeyes at 22nd. Indiana was 27th. USC was 38th. Penn State was 19th. UCLA was 50th. And Oregon, despite having that 12-0 record, was our 10th power-rated defense in college football last year. You kind of average all of that out, you're talking about an average opponent that was power ranked 48th each week. To kind of put that in perspective, you're probably looking at a defense on a team that would have probably been about 7-5 last year. So maybe squeezing out an 8-4, but I'll conservatively say probably about a 7-5 defense is what they went up against week in and week out last year. Now, I want to take a look at quickly let's see, is there 2 games or is there just 1? I'm gonna say 2 games that this team possibly could have won that would have gotten you over that season win total. The first one right off the bat is against Rutgers, losing that game 21-18. And then you go back and look at the Apple Cup, losing that game 24-19. You win those 2 games. You start the season off with a 6-game winning streak. You may go into the Iowa game with a little bit of different feel about your season there. So I would definitely say that leans to 2 possibilities of games that they could have won, but fell just a little bit short there. Now let's talk about this Washington offense. And we're going to give you 3 stats for the offense and just the 2 for defense. First up, when we're talking about the offense, we're going to look at the NCAA average per team, what Washington's accounting stat was for that category, and then our adjusted number for that category. So, and now for the defense, we'll just do their accounting stats in that category and then our adjusted number. Average team last season scored 28 points per game. The Huskies, 22.5. Now, when we adjust that, it comes out to 24.3 points per game. Still about, let's call it about 4 points short of the average there, but get you a little bit closer. Now, passing yards per game. 227 yards per game was the average. Washington was at 252. Slight downgrade when we adjust that to 249. So just a 3-yard passing difference there. Run game. Here's where we see some semblance of an outlier. Average team last year ran the ball for about 160 yards per game. The accounting numbers show the Huskies at 131. When we adjust for opponent, it gets them right there to the average 158 yards per game. So almost a 27-yard improvement there. And then total offense, 387 yards per game. When we look at the accounting stats for Washington, we have 384 yards per game. When we adjust that, we do tick over that 400-yard per game mark at 407. Now let's dive deeper into the advanced numbers that we have here. Average team drive ending with a score, that's either a touchdown or a field goal, was 40% last year. Washington was at 44.9. Very solid. But this is how you only average 22 points per game. Average team drives ending with a touchdown, 29%. Washington comes in at 27.6. So scoring points, yes, but they're kicking field goals and not getting those 7 points. Pretty sure that may have cost them one, if not both of those games that I referenced earlier. And then finally, third down conversion, average team was about 39%. When we adjusted that, Washington comes in at 37%. So a little bit worse in two of those metrics there. Horrible job of protecting the quarterback last year. 32 sacks in the games that we tracked. Average team gave up about 24 during the regular season last year. Now, this team did a really good job of taking care of the ball. 11 turnovers. So you didn't compound those sacks with turnovers, which is something that we usually see. So good job there by this team protecting the ball. Now, let's talk about our 3 E's. How effective, how explosive, and how efficient is your team's offense? Last season, Washington was our 66th ranked team as far as effectiveness on offense, 79th in explosiveness, 57th in efficiency. When we average that up, we're looking at an offense that ended the regular season last season as our 64th ranked offense in college football last year. To bullet point this offense, I would absolutely say it struggled with consistency and efficiency across the board there. Now, let's talk about the defense, and let's see if there's some signs of encouragement there. And again, we're going to look at what kind of offenses did this team face last season. And when we look at that baseline number of 68, Washington State was 44th. Rutgers was 46th. Iowa was 30th. Indiana was 3rd. USC was 27th. Penn State 48th. And then finally, the Oregon Ducks are 11th power ranked offense last year. So 7 of their opponents were inside of that top 68. 3 of their opponents were outside of the top 80. UCLA was 89th, Northwestern 101st, and then Eastern Michigan 109th on offense. You're talking about an average power ranking that this defense went up against last year of 53. Again, you're looking at a team that's probably around that 7-5 mark there. Now, let's dive deep into the metrics here for this defense. And again, just the 2 data points here. Points per game allowed, 22.8 points per game. When we adjust that, we get a number of 21.1. So solid scoring defense there. As far as passing defense, 167 yards per game. When we adjust for opponent, that actually improves even better to 150. So this pass defense was absolutely elite, especially when you look at that adjusted number for the Huskies last year. The run defense, solid, 158 yards per game. When we adjust for opponent, just a slight regression to 161 yards per game. Total offense allowed per game was at 325. When we adjust that based on opponents, goes down to 310. Almost 60 yards below what the average team gave up per game last year. So solid job by the defense there. Now let's take a dive into their advanced numbers and see how did they perform. Their opponents' drives ending with a score, touchdown or field goal, 35%. About 5 percentage points better than the average. 25.5% of their opponents' drives ended with a touchdown. Again, about 4 percentage points better than the average team last year. Now, here's the bugaboo. This team could not get off the field consistently enough on 4th downs. 44% conversion rate is what their opponents had last season. About 5 percentage points worse than the average team last year. Team did not do a great job of getting after the opponent's quarterback. 19 sacks there for the Husky defense. Their opponents converting on third downs, a little bit better than the average team there, I would say. 56% conversion rate compared to the average of 53. Their opponents were 9 out of 16 on fourth down conversions and only forced 14 turnovers. So you'd like to see that turnover differential be a little bit better than what it was. Let's talk about the 3 E's on defense for the Huskies. Effective defense, 76. As far as explosive plays allowed, this defense was 40th. And then as far as efficiency on defense, they were 46. Sum it all up, this unit ended the regular season as our 55th ranked defense there. So you're talking about a defense that was ranked 55th and an offense ranked 64th against that schedule. Got to give Jed Fish a little bit more kudos on the season so far. We still got plenty of work to do. Let's get to the special teams here. 69% field goal conversion rate. That is below the average there of about 76%. So got to execute the field goals a little bit better there. And as far as the punter goes, this team only averaged 3 punts per game, 43 yards per punt. That's solid. Coming in at 54th, you would like to be a little bit better there, but certainly not one of the worst units that we've looked at. As far as the turnover differential, they were a +3. You would like to see when your offense only commits 11 turnovers, that your defense can kind of get into that 18, 19 range there, really kind of swing the tide in some of those close games that they were in. As far as penalties, right on the average, 6 penalties per game for 53 yards worth of penalties. That is exactly what the average is. So this team did not beat themselves with penalties. That's a sign of a well-coached team there. Now, as far as one-score games last year, Washington was 1-2. So only 33% in one-score games. Against quality opponents, also 33%. 2 wins, 4 losses. So you got to step up when you're stepping up in weight class there. And when I'm looking at it, they lost to, let's see, Indiana, Iowa, Oregon, and Penn State. So you played 3 of the 4 top finishers last year in your conference, and you went over in those contests there. So if you want to compete for a Big Ten championship, you got to do better when you step up in weight class for sure. Now, as far as this coach being aggressive on fourth downs, I would say so. About 16% is what he's going to attempt a fourth down conversion. That ranks 39th out of 144 qualifying coaches last season. But here's the problem. If you're going to be that aggressive, you got to make sure it counts. 23 attempts, only 11 conversions. That's a conversion rate of 48%. Average team was at 53%. So if you're going to be that aggressive, you got to make it pay dividends, or you're going to give your opponents short fields to work on, and that is always problematic. All right, well, we got a couple of minutes here. I'm going to just take a look at the quarterback position and Will Rogers. 11 games last season, completed 71% of his passes because a lot of that is behind or at the line of scrimmage for 2,458 yards, 14 touchdowns, 7 INTs. Did see a little bit of Damon Williams Jr. He did appear in 13 games, completed 78% of his passes for 944 yards, 8 touchdowns, 1 INT. Be interested to see who those games stats came against. So we'll get to the splits here in just a moment. I wanted to see if I could pull up the games that he really kind of appeared in to where he racked up the touchdowns. Okay, so his work came in the bowl game, it looks like, where he threw for 4 touchdowns against Louisville. That's where the bulk of his work came in at there. Did play quite a bit against Oregon, went 17 for 20, 200 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 INTs. So did get a chance to see a really good defense there. So we'll see where he winds up on the depth chart this year. All right, with about 5 minutes to go, let's run through the splits really quickly here for their offense and then their defense. And then we'll get to the final grade and the final verdict. 6 wins, 6 losses. I think we're going to see some swings here, both from the offense and defense. Certainly so. Points per game. In those 6 victories, 28.8 points per game, 267 yards passing on 32 attempts, 8.3 yards per passing attempt, 11.7 yards per completion. That's pretty decent there for me. 33 rushing attempts for 147 yards, 4.5 yards per rushing attempt. Solid work there from their ground game. Third down conversions in those 6 victories, 40, let's call it 44%, converted 40% on their fourth down attempts. Going, looks like 2 for 5 there, and just committed 5 turnovers in those 6 victories. In their 6 losses, 16.2 points per game, 238 yards per game passing on 32 attempts, only 7.4 yards per passing attempt, 10.3 yards per completion. Ground game takes a little bit of a step back. Still 32 rushing attempts, but only 116 yards per game rushing, 3.6 yards per rushing attempt. Third down conversion absolutely suffered. 29% conversion rate on third downs, and converted 9 out of their 18 attempts on fourth down. So 50% there, committed 6 turnovers. So this team wasn't committing a lot of turnovers, just wasn't executing well enough. As far as their defense, in their 6 victories, only 12 points per game allowed, 159 yards passing per game allowed on 34 attempts. Their opponents, 4.6 yards per attempt, 9.1 yards per completion. 33 rushing attempts, 114 yards per game allowed, 3.4 yards per rushing attempt. Yeoman's work there. Third down conversion, just 37% is what their opponents were converting on third downs, 58% on fourth downs. Did force 10 turnovers in those 6 victories. In their 6 losses, 33 points per game. Opponents passing 175 yards per game, but now just on 25 attempts, 7.1 yards per attempt, 11.8 yards per completion. Not bad there. Here's where the problem was. Could not stop the run. 38 rushing attempts by their opponents to the tune of 203 yards rushing, 5.3 yards per rushing attempt. Their opponents converting on third downs, 56%, and converted 2 out of 4 attempts on fourth down for 50%, only 4 forced turnovers. Folks, interested to see where this grade is going to come out. Let's go ahead and get to the Washington Huskies final grade, and then we'll hit the final verdict for the Washington Huskies. And the Washington Huskies will get a final grade of a C+. We like the fact that this team did a great job of taking care of the ball and not making a lot of mental mistakes with penalties and turnovers. What we didn't like was the execution of this offense. Not enough explosive plays, and that run defense, when they stepped up and went fast, absolutely got pushed around like a little kid on the playground. So, final verdict for this team. The Washington Huskies had potential to exceed their 6-6 record, but fell short due to situational execution and defensive lapse. The Huskies had one of the better passing attacks in the nation, but their defensive struggles to keep up with elite competition absolutely held this team back from having a much better record than what we saw in 2024. In our final minute or so with you, let me give you 3 keys for the Washington Huskies to improve on in 2025. 1, you got to strengthen that run defense. Old coach told me you earn the right to rush the passer when you stop the other team from running the ball. We talked about the numbers that they gave up in those 6 losses to the tune of over 200 yards per game. You didn't earn the right as a defense to get after the opposing team's quarterback. And that caused you not to get control of the game. Key number 2, establish a more balanced offense approach. A stronger run game will take some of the pressure off of whoever is going to be the starting quarterback next year. Going to be interested to see how that battle turns out. So, strengthen the offensive line and find you a running back that can break a tackle here and there and not get slowed down in the backfield, getting 5 or 6 yards instead of just 1 or 2. And then key number 3, you got to improve your performance against top-tier opponents. As I mentioned, the 4 best teams that they faced on their schedule, they lost all 4 of those games. So winning big games is the next step for this head coach with this program. If the Huskies can improve in these 3 areas, this team could absolutely make a run back at the college football playoffs, this time under head coach Jedd Fisch.
Thank you for tuning into this podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and our deep dive into all things college football. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at CrunchTimeVIP for updates, insights, and more content. And make sure to visit our website at CrunchTimeSportsAdvantage.com for in-depth blogs, game previews, and information about our Crunch Time Express handicapping packages. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time for our next patient on the 2024 College Football Autopsy Report.